Happy Thursday evening to you all. Time for another edition of some live handicapping here. I am Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. And David, we tested this out last week. We got some good feedback where we were able to take a look at some of the big races. We looked at Kentucky Downs. We looked at closing weekend at Del Mar. This weekend, we'll get a chance to focus on Woodbine. They have a really good card with 3 grade 1s. They're all Breeders' Cup winning your ins, and I think 5 graded stakes overall.
Yeah, we're going to try to do a little bit more of this on Thursday nights when we can, especially around some of these big weekends like Woodbine on Saturday. And, more than just giving out the picks or telling you who we like last week, we want to take you through the handicapping process, watch some replays with you, talk about how we watch replays, look at some stats, just kind of have conversations about these races, not about giving out who our picks are, but kind of how we arrive at those picks and go through that process for you. And you guys can participate in that. We want you to, participate in the chat on YouTube. If you put some comments up, they'll show up on screen. We'll try to answer any questions you have. So definitely join us to do some handicapping.
Yeah, we'll be able to navigate through the past performances. So if you have any questions about a particular horse, maybe you want to look at a chart or something, we'll pull that horse up for you. We'll take a look. We'll share some of our thoughts and comments. David, I think we'll probably spend most of our time in the graded stakes and around the grade 1s. That will be the really big, important races. And they're important whether or not you're betting the races this weekend, even because if you're going to be playing the Breeders' Cup, you want to get an idea of some of these horses that might be qualifying and winning their way in. And I think the first of those races was race number 6, right? The Summer. Is that where you want to get started?
Yeah, let's start with the Summer. Full disclosure, I kind of hoped to do most of the races in this pick 5. I ended up just really focusing on the 3 grade 1 races.
Yeah, so did I. Same.
Yeah, I started going through these 2-year-old races, and I just spent way too much time on the Summer and the Natalma kind of digging into things. And it is the kind of race, especially this Summer that we're starting off with, where there's a lot to talk about, and you could really find something interesting about every single horse in this field.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the 2 different 2-year-old races, they'll be the 6th and the 8th race. They're both the grade 1s. The first of them, this one, the Summer, this is the race that has a lot of horses that don't have experience going long. I think only 2 horses in the field have actually run the mile or beyond, and that's Bill of Ice and Teddy's Rocket to the outside. So you have a lot of these horses in here, David, who have shown some early speed, who have been going shorter. And on paper, this one looked like the pace would be pretty honest and pretty fair. And then the other 2-year-old race was kind of the opposite. That one didn't look like there was quite as much speed on paper. So you'll kind of get maybe 2 different looks at race styles if they played true to form. What were some of your early thoughts about this Summer? I did want to mention one stat, the Appleby Godolphin stat at Woodbine. In grade 1s. This was right at the top of Ron Gearking's preview for the Woodbine Mile. 9 for 17 when Godolphin and Appleby team up in grade 1s at Woodbine, which is quite a number.
I think that's a good place to start because there are a lot of different ways to slice these Charlie Appleby stats, and you'll pull up the trainer pattern tool and Deer, a formulator here. And yeah, at Woodbine, he obviously has posted some great numbers over the past few years. I'll pull up Turf on Woodbine, 7 for 13. I mean, winning it over a 50% rate. But I will say, Gino, this was a conversation last year as well. And you can kind of see that the horses in this stat, they're sorted by date. And all of the runners he sent out in 2024 were losers. A couple of them finished second, but they were all very short prices. And he came away with 0 victories. And generally, Charlie Appleby has just not been having the success in North America, specifically in the past year, that he's had maybe in prior seasons. And I mean, there was no way that he could have continued at the rate that he started at when he first came over and kept a string here, 3-4 years ago, because he literally was winning, 30-40% of the races. And that's just unsustainable over a longer period of time. But I mean, I'll just, take away the Woodbine stats for a minute and just kind of focus on his North American stats over, let's just say, the past year. 3 for 25. Not the kind of numbers that we're used to Charlie Appleby posting. And I know he did recently get a grade 1 victory in the Sword Dancer at Saratoga that improved the stat a little bit, but still, the barn's been a little cold over here. We'll see how that translates to the results on Saturday because it does feel like he's bringing over some live runners.
And the key point is they always get bet. Right. These are horses that are very short prices repeatedly. So from a gambling standpoint, you want to make your decision on some of these horses. And if they're not trending as well as they were for a while, then, 3 of the grade 1 races, they will be short prices and there will be the same connections. And so, you'll look at the races individually, but collectively, take a look at the stat that David was just pointing out. And this is a lot of these numbers that are positive are from like 2023 and 2022 and around that point. The last year and a half, this barn has just not been doing as well with those same horses they ship in at very, very short prices. So if we kind of start there, and maybe we're either a little bit cold or we're trepidatious on a horse like Wild Desert, who is going to be a short price. I will say, in watching the replay, he was a little unlucky late. Horse in front of him kept coming over into him like late and really bothering him. I don't know if he would have won the race, but probably would have been a little closer than the finish was. So he is logical, but how short of a price do you want to take on a horse like this, David, when you look at this field and there are so many other fun options in a race like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is the obvious starting point of this race, not just because of the success that Charlie Appleby's had, but because obviously his form over there is pretty strong. He was third in a Group 2 last time, and that felt like a legitimate Group 2, where the 2 horses that finished ahead of him, one, Saba Desert, who is his stablemate, seems like a pretty talented runner over there, probably a horse that we might see in some Group 1 races later on this season, and also the runner-up Italy. I'll mention him when we get to the other European in this race in just a second, but that's a horse that was actually favored in that superlative, a highly touted runner for Aidan O'Brien. And as you said, Wild Desert had a little trouble late. Obviously, we can't pull up this replay and formulator with it being a foreign race. I'll just point out, anybody who gets those all access PPs where you also have access to the Timeform US past performances, Timeform US has some really detailed notes and also trip notes about these horses' prior races. And there's some really detailed notes about the most recent performance for Wild Desert. So even if you don't watch the replays, a really great shortcut is just look up these Timeform notes from the foreign correspondents at Timeform that we feed into the Timeform US PPs for these horses that are coming over from England, Ireland, and sometimes France. So just something to take note of for Wild Desert and the Secret Adversary, the other Euro in this race. Obviously you could see the Timeform ratings here and the Timeform US PPs. They've kind of stagnated a little bit, but as you said, had the trouble last time. Feels like this horse has some talent. But I also think that this is a stronger race overall, Gino, than the Natalma that we'll get to in just a second. Yep. So I think that there are some good horses in here that are based in North America as well.
Yeah, and the way the race shapes up from a pace standpoint is going to be very interesting, because I do think there are a lot of horses that want to be forward. We've seen Rude Procedure want to be forward. We've seen Casson and Marcus J right next to each other. They may be the 2 quickest in the field, David, and they're right next to each other. But a horse like Marcus J, horses like this are always interesting to me, because while this horse was very quick and impressive winning his debut, he drew the inside and he was down towards the inside. So a lot of times when horses like this get out and they just go, I don't necessarily know if he's just a need the lead type horse yet with that only one race there. He might be a talented horse who could be fine sitting off horses in here. It could have just been got away early down on the inside. And of course, you're just going to go on with it there.
Yeah, as you said, he had easy speed on debut. You could see it in the replay that we're showing here. He just makes the front, not getting a whole lot of pressure, but he's well in hand. And I'll fast forward to the end. There's really not a whole lot to see here. He just winds at will. Gets a few token slaps of the crop there, but he is just way better than the horses he's facing here. I mean, Gino, as a son of hard spun, there's some stamina breeding on the bottom side. He's not supposed to mind a little bit of added distance. Hard spun is such a versatile sire. I mean, he can get horses that handle the turf. I mean, when you pull up hard spun stats in this progeny summary and deer formulator, you could just see once you get past the 2-year-old and age group stats down to the surface preferences. I mean, just very consistent across the board. He excels on dirt, synth, turf, doesn't really matter. So I'm not going to be surprised when this horse handles the distance and the surface. But as you were saying, there's so much speed in here, just hard to envision him getting the kind of trip that he got on debut. And I'll just pivot over to the other horse you mentioned, Gino, the number 7 Casson, because really interesting. We've got this soaring free, and you mentioned all the stretch outs in this race, and a lot of them are coming out of this 6.5 furlong prep for this that was run in the middle of August at Woodbine. And as I pull up the chart and deer formulator, you can see the top top 5 finishers in that Soaring Free are all coming back in this summer stakes. And, I think we'll get to the winner in just a second, but I do want to focus on Kassan for a minute because he has a lot of early speed. He's shown that speed in all of his starts. But something that I've noticed when I watch a lot of his replays, Gino, is that he has this big, long stride to him. He kind of gives you the impression when you watch his races, particularly the first 2 races on synthetic, like he's waiting on competition a little bit. He's always finishing with something left in the tank. And I know he was beaten last time when he first tried the turf, but I feel like he just got a little surprised by the winner that day. And he was really trying to stay with that foe at the end. He just doesn't really have that turn of foot that you need to be successful as a turf sprinter. I like this horse going longer. I just worry about how the pace setup is going to affect him.
He battles on really well. Like, as you pointed out, he was headed and you're kind of expecting him to back up, and that's not the case because he fits the template of a horse who just will be better going longer. Completely agree with you. I like him more going longer than sprinting. It just is a tough spot with, what looks like other speeds here for his first start going longer. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if he's able to kind of relax a little bit more here and get the best out of him in this race. David, what do you think about the horse that comes in from Saratoga to the outside? That Teddy's Rocket, who I don't have any knocks, and I think this horse on paper looks solid. He really did get a perfect setup in his win, and I wonder with the horse that's drawn away to the outside if they'll get that same type of setup. But he is one of only 2 horses in here that have gone longer, so I think you have to at least give them a little bit of got to have to look twice at these horses who have already shown us that they can sit off and they can pass horses going longer.
Yeah, we'll show the replay here. Teddy's Rocket's the number 8 in this race. And a couple things about this. He gets a very good trip. So, make no mistake about that. Joel Rosario gives this horse a fantastic ride. After drawing the outside post, you can see right here in those pink silks, he gets him right over to the inside, slots him into the pocket. For any horse, this is a great trip on the turf. Saving ground on the inside, coming through. But for a first-time starter, you could see coming onto the backstretch, he's just a little bit green. You could see his head is a little bit in the air. He's having to be niggled at to sort of stay in that pocket position. Like he's not totally comfortable in there. And I'll fast forward a little bit as they get, towards the lane. Even right here as they move to the half-mile pole, Joel's having to ask him to stay in that spot. And they're going at a decent clip up front, but this horse has shown quality in the morning. So, he's supposed to be in the bridle. And when you watched his workouts coming into the race, he looked like the kind of horse that would almost be hard to rate. And that wasn't the case in the race. He kind of had to be asked to stay engaged with the other horses. And he splits horses here. And he comes on like he's going to win this race pretty easily. I will say he gets a challenge at the end from the number 4 Noble Dynasty. I don't know exactly how the post times work out, but that horse is coming back on Saturday at Aqueduct and is making the second start of his career. So don't know which one of these is running first, but you might get some barometer on how the other one's going to do based on the performances they put forth on Saturday. But I like the way that Teddy's Rocket sort of responds to this challenge at the very end of the race. He kind of flicked his left ear like he was just waiting for a horse to come to him. And once that horse did, they sort of gallop out together past the wire. So I think Teddy's Rocket has real quality. For those that don't know, this is a horse that was highly touted prior to his debut. He had put forth some really impressive workouts on the Oklahoma turf course at Saratoga. And I like what you said, Gino, that he's got that 2-turn experience. And with all the pace in the race, I think Joel is going to be content, especially drawing an outside post, to just take this horse back, let the race come to him, and produce a big finish. I don't think he's going to be 12-1 because I think there's way too much to like about this horse. Yeah. But of the North American-based runners, he is definitely the one that I want.
There's 2 more horses I wanted to ask you about a little bit in here. The first one is a horse who I like a little, and I'm going to hopefully get a good price on this horse and play, is one of the other horses that has the experience going long, and that's the 6 Bill of Ice. This is a horse who's very light on Bayer, on the speed figure, only came back a 56. But the race visually was very impressive. And what I like was able to sit back off horses. And this was kind of like the race with Teddy's Rocket. He sat farther back, but the race set up very well for him. But we're talking about this race possibly setting up the same way, right? Where there could be a very honest, contested pace early on, and we're looking for a horse like this who's going to try to sit back off the pace. Bill of Ice in here, who is, backing up right there. He's the number 5. He's in 3rd now, and at one point, David, he's going to be about 7 or 8 lengths off. He ends up really winning this race impressively. And after we watch the race, we can take a look too at his pedigree, which is pretty nice. I'm a little less concerned about speed figures with the 2-year-olds that are lightly raced. It is tough to make speed figures sometimes for 2-year-olds going long on the turf in different situations. So I'm not as concerned that this horse has a light speed figure. I mean, he's traveling really, really well in here, gets a great setup, but he just angles around and he does what he should do with a setup like this. And I thought this was a nice performance, David. This horse actually has a pretty solid little pedigree, too, when we take a look after.
Yeah, I mean, you could see he's getting a pretty good trip overall, but he never saw the rail. And you have to like the way he's getting the distance, clearly better than the horses he's facing in this race. They're getting tired at the end, and he's just maintaining those really steady strides all the way to the wire. And as you were alluding to, I mean, no surprise when you see who his full brother is, American Revolution, who was a dirt horse, but a horse who wanted every bit of distance that he could get. He was a specialist going 1.125 miles on the dirt. So stamina is really no problem for Bill of Ice. I guess the big question with him, Gino, is just how good is he? Because as you said, the speed figure was low. It's hard to gauge, as you noted, how strong those races are, even when they get low numbers. Sometimes horses have come back to run better. His particular race, we can look at it. There are no run backs yet, so it's a little tough to evaluate. One thing that we should, I guess, note, Gino, I forget if you mentioned this at the start, but this race is being run on the inner turf course at Woodbine, and he is a horse that does have winning experience over the inner turf course, whereas a lot of these that raced in sprint races raced over that E.P. Taylor turf course. That's the larger turf course outside of the dirt, and the reason that this race is being run on the inner, you're not wrong if you remember it being run on the E.P. Taylor, they're renovating the E.P. Taylor turf course, I think, this season, and I believe it's going to affect next season's Woodbine Mile Day 2. So that course is going to be closed for a while. So all of these 1 mile races at Woodbine on Saturday that are typically run around 1 turn over the E.P. Taylor turf course are going to be 2-turn races over this inner turf course. So Bill of Ice at least does have experience doing that, whereas these other do not.
I want to ask you one more question, David, and all of you out there, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, any horses that you want to take a look at, let us know as we navigate our way through the grade 1s, and maybe we'll take a sneak at the other graded stakes, but we'll really focus on those grade 1s here. The number 9, Military Time. So if any trainer knows where horses stack up at Woodbine, it's Mark Casse, who has a pulse for that circuit. And this horse was supplemented to the race, the lone supplement in the race, wheeling back pretty quickly 2 weeks after a very impressive debut going 6.5 on the synthetic. And David, the Dam was a 6-time winner on the grass. So there is some pedigree there for this horse to be okay on the grass. Visually, this race was very nice, kind of a slow start, a couple lengths off, and then just angled around nicely. They're obviously high on this horse to supplement, to come back and to get him in here. It's just really interesting to me when a barn like this makes this move, because they understand where horses fit. And if Casse thinks Military Time fits well with this group, I wouldn't be surprised if this horse runs pretty well.
Yeah, this horse, he debuted going, 6.5 furlongs, but gives you the impression that more distance is going to be his friend. I mean, he's the horse in the Pink Silks here. He's rating towards the inside. I won't show the full replay, but I mean, he moves through and he's going to put this field away pretty impressively at the end. One thing I will say about him, Gino, is that pedigree's a little odd with this one because, there is a lot of turf synth on the bottom side, but he's a son of Gun Runner. Yeah. And the Gun Runners just do not have the best stats on the turf. I mean, winning at 9% and 8% on the turf it's respectable enough in terms of all sires. But for one that stands for $250,000, that's winning dirt sprints and dirt routes by close to a 20% rate among his progeny, winning at 8 or 9% on the turf is just not really suggesting that his horses really prefer that surface. So I've got some questions about the surface switch. It's also, I was looking up some stats for Mark Casse around this horse, because I would think that going synth to turf with horses like this is something that Mark Casse does all the time, just given how much he participates in the synthetic maiden races up at Woodbine. But I looked up synthetic to turf specifically with horses that broke their maidens last time out or are making their second career starts. Sample size is pretty small. And he's just 1 for 8 doing this. A little shocking. And you look through this stat, and he's had a couple horses run in the summer, specifically off this same pattern. A debut victory on synth, going to turf, and all three of those horses were off the board for whatever that's worth. And he's coming back on short rest. So this horse is probably going to be a square price. I just have some questions about whether or not this is the ideal spot for him.
Yeah. And, anyone that we haven't talked about in here that you wanted to take a second look at? The 5.
We should definitely talk about the 5 2 Out Hero is a horse we should talk about, and probably the other Euro. We'll get to him at the very end. I mentioned the Soaring Free Stakes, those 5 horses that are stretching out from that local prep. He was the winner of that race, and I can pull up the replay of it. Hold on, let me just refresh my PPs here. And this horse is good. He's done nothing wrong in both career starts. His debut on synthetic was extremely impressive, just controlling a race on the front end. And, I'll go to the middle of this replay here. He is the number 1 horse, 2 Out Hero, who kind of wanted to show speed, but he sort of gets pulled back into the pocket. You can kind of tell the connections wanted to give him a little bit of an education in this race. And he's a little keen behind horses, but you can see him rating really well. The horse that I thought might be interesting stretching out from this race, the number 4, Kassan, he's the one that's leading this field, the number 4 horse. The number 9, Argos, he's also in here. We could maybe give him a mention at the end. I just want to show the move that 2 Out Hero makes at the top of the stretch here, Gino, because he puts forth a pretty impressive turn of foot to put this field away.
Yeah, and the key for me in this race was seeing that he could sit behind horses, right? Mm-hmm. That he could flip off. If there's a battle up front early, he doesn't have to worry about being down on the inside and dealing with that battle. He sat behind, got an opening, and he pushed through here. And he won this race pretty easily. Like, the margin isn't all that much when you just look at it on paper, but he wasn't losing this race. I thought he handled the other 4 that he faced pretty well. And I was with you. I think the only other one I could probably look at and maybe take something away from was Kassan out of that race. I thought Argos sort of sat the trip. It was maybe a little bit wide, but I didn't think had very many excuses in there. And it was a good effort from 2 Out Hero. Like, really no knocks on the horse. And I expect to get another solid trip, either like just behind the leaders, probably not too far off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one concern with 2 Out Hero that I have is the distance, because the way that he travels and the way he wants to show speed, I'm concerned that going longer might not really suit him. You could hear his Dam's past performances, Song River. She was kind of a 5 furlong turf sprinter. You can go to the second, I think he's the only foal out of her, but even the second generation, the second Dam, she was a confirmed turf sprinter. So I wonder how long this one's really going to want to go. But against this field, the professionalism he showed last time, maybe he can do it. Let's talk about the other Euro just for a second before we move on from this race, Gino. The Secret Adversary. This is a horse that took a few starts to actually break his maiden over there, but he did break his maiden in a listed stakes race, the Churchill last time. And I think there was a well-backed Aidan, I think it was an Aidan O'Brien runner in there, Brussels, who was second. And he did get the job done over that horse kind of finally, because you watch his first few starts and you could say he's got a little bit of hang in him. He wasn't quite getting the job done. He lost at like almost 1-10 odds in his third start, a race that looked like he couldn't lose, but I think it was a debut winner that beat him that day. And that horse actually came back to run well in the stakes. So he's kept good company. And I'll just kind of make a comparison between him and Wild Desert, the Charlie Appleby runner in here. The horse that beat him on debut, Italy, he's actually the horse that was second in that Group 2 Superlative Stakes that finished one spot ahead of Wild Desert last time. So the form lines are actually pretty strong for the number 4, the Secret Adversary, and he's not going to take nearly as much money as the Godolphin runner.
Yeah, he was visually pretty impressive in that last race too, David, after being disappointing, as you pointed out. Prior to that, it seemed like it felt like watching that race, maybe that was one of those grow-up performances where he did figure things out, because he sat a couple lengths off, he angled out very nicely, really good late energy, and then was kind of wrapped up in the end too. I thought it was a really good performance visually. Don't have many knocks on that one. I think I had this horse in like a little under spots, just kind of curious what the price is, but I completely agree with you. If you're comparing the two, and this horse is 6-1-ish, wouldn't even shock me if this horse floated up a little bit and you're in like the 6 to 8-1 range versus the horse to the outside, who's going to be more like 5-2, 3-1. This may be a really nice horse to offer some value in here.
Yeah, and we talked so much about Charlie Appleby having success over here on a much smaller scale. If you look up the stats for his trainer, James Stack, who's based overseas, he's only come over with one horse over the past 5 years to North America. But some might remember that was a filly named Aspen Grove, who did upset the Grade 1 Belmont Oaks
Yep.
at 15-1 odds a few years ago. So he's come over with intention before. And I think it's interesting that this horse is here for this race. And I don't know, Gino, about you, but when I was handicapping this, when it was starting to get me excited for the Breeders' Cup, especially that Friday card that I think is going to be on Halloween this year, because those races are always really fun to handicap with the Euros coming over, and you're kind of getting a little bit of that flavor in this summer stakes.
It did feel like a little preview of that here. And keep an eye on the special wagers this weekend. They have some additional wagers at Woodbine. You can check them out on the website. There's a Turf Champions Pick 3. That's a special Pick 3, a $5 minimum, 15% takeout. That is the 3 Grade 1s that we'll look at. That starts right here. They also have a global Grade 1 Pick 5 that links the 3 Grade 1s with Group 1's, the Group 1 St. Ledger Stakes and the Group 1 Irish Champion Stakes. So you go from Doncaster to Leopardstown to Woodbine in a Pick 5. And then there's also the All Stakes Pick 5 that starts right here in race 6. And it goes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with 3 Grade 1s and 5 graded stakes races. So lots of opportunities. And I'm really liking, David, that more tracks are starting to put up those higher minimum, low takeout Pick 3s and doubles. For the way that I play races, those wagers make a lot of sense. A lot of times I'm trying to beat some of the short prices that you are too. We're looking to try to take shots against them. It's hard to do that 4 or 5 times in a row, sometimes in a Pick 5. That's why the doubles and Pick 3s can be nicer, especially if you're someone who plays a little bigger for some bigger prices. You have to connect a little bit less. You get that low takeout still at 15%. I'm definitely going to have a Pick 3 or a couple different Pick 3s mapped out in these 3 Grade 1s.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Low takeout wagers are good. That's pretty obvious. I like to see some low takeout wagers that aren't just Pick 5s though, because it allows more fans that can excel at different kinds of bets, actually tap into the low takeout and benefit from it. Because let's be honest, Pick 5s are hard to hit unless you're a really sophisticated player with good practices playing those types of wagers over a long period of time. It's tough. And having access to low takeout wagers that feel more hittable are just great for the sport in general. And those higher minimum wagers that you talk about, like that $5 Pick 3, what I like about it is it just promotes thinking about the wagers in a smarter fashion. If you're somebody who likes to spread more, it gets you to narrow down your opinion. So you're playing a ticket that is where you're getting more bang for your buck, because when the minimum is 20 cents, we all feel the temptation to just throw more horses into the ticket because we've got more money to spend. Mm-hmm. But the $5 minimum, it really makes you think a lot more about who you're using, why you're using those horses, and if you're getting the price that you need. Because it's easier to do math when you're using fewer horses.
That was a good look at the first Grade 1. You want to move on to the next of them?
Let's move on. We'll pass over the Ontario Matron. Looks like an interesting race. I just didn't do much of a deep dive into it. So let's go on to the next Grade 1. That is the Natalma. It's still similar conditions to the summer. This one going the 1 mile distance on the inner turf, but for the 2-year-old fillies.
Yeah, big shout out to Darren Datillo. Thanks, Darren, for saying hello to us on Facebook. And anyone else who is watching, who is playing or looking at the races from Woodbine, we're going to dive into race number 8, the Grade 1 Natalma. Let us know if you have any questions or any horses you want us to take a second look at. We got another Appleby Godolphin to start with, right? Another group stakes winner recently at Newmarket. That's the 5, Dance to the Music. This race did sort of look on paper, David, like there would be a top 2 with this horse. The 5, Dance to the Music, was very impressive. I thought like workmanlike in that win, the most recent win at Newmarket. Then to the outside, a horse who was more visually impressive was Deep Learning, who won at Saratoga first time out for Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt, Clarovich Stables. That one was a horse who you saw the real big turn of foot late. And I think these two will probably take the most money in kind of a top tier. And then it should be like everybody else below them.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and probably that's the way it should be
Yeah,
because there just isn't the same depth to this race that
not at
there
all.
appears to be in the summer. There are some more interesting horses in here that are based at Woodbine, particularly those coming out of the local prep that catch a glimpse, and we can talk about them in just a little bit. But it does feel like those two that you highlighted are going to attract a lot of support, and they're probably the two most likely winners of this race. Let's maybe talk about the Appleby runner first, Gino, because I agree with what you were saying. It kind of does look like she's a work in progress watching her first couple of races, both going shorter than this, it should be noted. I mean, she debuted at 6 furlongs back in May. I would imagine there was some kind of setback with her for her to not show up again until the middle of August, 3 months later. But she did win a Group 3 when she came back. Watching both of those races, she likes to change leads late in her races, which
Hmm.
isn't such a big deal for the European runners because they're mostly running on a straightaway. You don't expect them to have the same sort of formulaic lead changes that horses based in North America do. But she kind of has a little bit of an awkward action to her. When you watch the first race, I mean, it just looked like she was bobbling a little bit at the very end. And I mean, she got the job done, but it wasn't the prettiest victory. And the last time, they were just walking early in that race. I mean, they were going so slow, and the whole field was just sprinting to the wire. And I mean, she was like really quickening her stride to sort of keep with that pace, and she is able to gut it out at the very end. But the way that she was finishing that race, it made me think like she looks a little bit more like a sprinter to me than a horse that really wants to go route distances on the turf. And you look up her pedigree. She's got a very good full sibling. That is Space Blues, who is the Breeders' Cup Mile winner from a few years ago. But I mean, you can see looking at his past performances here, over in Europe, he was primarily a sprinter for almost all of his career. And this really, to me, she looks a lot like Space Blues, especially with her action and her smaller frame. So I do wonder how far she's ultimately going to want to go. Maybe it doesn't matter in this race going a mile, especially the way it sets up. It probably isn't wise to harp on the distance too much, but she doesn't give me as much confidence as I hoped that she would when I was watching the replays.
I completely agree. She was green in both of them, green late. They had to shake her up a little bit too and kind of ask her, and she responded. I think she was just a little classier than the horses that she was facing. Now she's going to be going longer, as you pointed out. There is a gap from May to August, so there might be a little bit of a fitness, missing here still from her trying to get to that mile. I'd much prefer, I think, of the two short prices, the outside runner, who I think at Saratoga was visually impressive. If we were just going to compare and contrast the two of them, I thought I liked what Deep Learning did going the mile in a 16th. And when I'm deciding on how I'm going to handicap races like this, I'm probably going to pick one of these two shorter prices to be the horse that I will either key in on, use in the top spots along with one or two others. I generally won't use the two short prices, however you're going to play it. If you're playing multi races, or maybe you're playing in your tries and you're putting a horse on top, this would be the one that I trust more of the two short prices, David. And you've known this horse. You handicapped this race, and this was a horse who got bet down first time out of the box.
Yeah, there were some stories about her prior to her debut, much like Teddy's Rocket in the summer. She looked really good. I mean, I'll pull up the replay because it's worth watching. Again, kind of like Teddy's Rocket, she got a very good trip in this race. I mean, it's not like she had to overcome too much.
No.
But the kick that she puts in through the stretch is pretty eye-catching. Also, at the beginning of this race, she is the number 4 horse in here in those Klarovich distinctive white and red silks, who's going to take towards the back of the pack. She'll save ground early, and I can kind of fast forward because she gets a good ground saving trip in mid pack here. But you'll notice that coming around the far turn, she's going to sort of slot up the inside, and it doesn't look an upper stretch like she's going to win the race as easily as she does. But the way that she sort of gradually just extends her stride more and more as she finds daylight, right about here, you can see she starts to angle towards the outside, and she is going to finish up on her left lead. She's a little awkward with the lead changes right there, and she'll switch back over to it right here. But I like that when she does switch leads, she finds this extra gear to run away from this field. And you could see she is just all legs. She's got this big stride on her, and she just was bounding away from that field at the end. Now, the downside, Gino, is, in a weird way, is the fact that the race got an 85 buyer, because it's so obvious. And that's a really high number for a 2-year-old filly. It almost feels too high, because I look up the chart in Formulator, and there have been a few runbacks. The runbacks haven't flattered the number. And I almost wish it were lower because you'd get a fairer price on her. I think she's going to be favored in this race.
I agree.
Based on the speed figure and the visual impression of her debut. I will say one run back that doesn't show here is Sweet Little Lila, who actually ran today at Aqueduct. And I don't know yet what speed figure she got. I would imagine it's probably similar to the one on debut. So I think that performance validates the debut figure a little bit. But the most interesting thing I find about this horse, Gino, is the fact that she's here, because we don't see Chad use this race as his Breeders' Cup prep with too many of his top 2-year-olds.
I agree. And so I think it's a really nice spot for her to come over, try to grab a grade 1. But she's a short price. The Appleby runner who we talked about, I think they'll flip-flop. I think that'll end up probably being the second choice. Yeah. If we beat these fillies, David, who would it be? Who would be some of the horses you look towards to try to beat these two?
Well, first of all, I'll say I wish I had a better alternative to these two horses. I kept looking for one and I had trouble really settling upon one. I mean, I guess if you're going to try to look past these two horses, one that we probably should mention is the number 6 Hot Mash, who I personally have reservations about. But her debut race at Ellis Park was really impressive. Now, I can't pull up the replay because it's a CTI track, but she showed so much speed in that race. They just strung that field out early. And I know the first quarter in 20-1 seems impossible to believe. I don't know if they actually went that fast, but when you watch the replay, you could almost believe it because there were just gaps between everybody. And she was geared down at the end, but the race was over a long way out. And she was slowing late in that race. I look up the pedigree. It's a little more sprint oriented. Her dam won as far as 7 furlongs, but she was really more of a sprinter on the dirt and the turf. And this filly was just so fast first time out, going all the way from the 5.5 furlongs out to the mile here. I worry that she's going to be able to hold her speed going this far.
Yeah, the positives were she did relax a little bit after that fast start and kind of sit off that other horse a bit. So that made me think she might be able to relax and stretch her speed out a little more. I think she did have a sibling, Peace and War, who a half sibling who actually won the grade 1 Alcibiades. So maybe there's enough distance for her. I do think if you're trying to beat those two, she is the horse that you look at and go, she should have a couple length lead on this field, because this race was much different on paper than the 6th race where, I mean, Pina Colada showed speed, but nowhere near the type of speed. Going 7 furlongs was like 24-3, 24:50, I think, for Pina Colada. And then looking at the rest, nobody else was really that close to the lead in their races early on. So I do, price is key for this horse. You do not want to take a short price. I wouldn't honestly want to take anything lower than that 6-1. If this horse is in the 6 to 8-1 range and, those two other horses get bet down a bit, then I could absolutely see this horse as at least a pricey alternative who could get the jump on these horses, get out front. I think for me, the other one in here, David, would just be logically the one, Corsia Veloce, but I don't even really know how good she is. She looked nice in winning her local prep. She beat the boys in her debut, but she will have to go farther here. She could just get a really nice trip down on the inside. So if she's good enough, she could have every opportunity in here, maybe sit in third behind the leaders and see if she can get the jump on some of the deeper closers. But I couldn't get too creative. It was really the logical horses on paper that were either the top betting choices or horses like the 6 Hot Mash, who might be in front. Maybe you get the local horse, Corsia Veloce, who has the experience and knows Woodbine and could just sit a good trip.
Yeah, Corsia Veloce is a horse that I ended up liking more when I handicapped this race than I thought I would at first. You could see she's the number 3 horse in this replay, and you could see she's a little keen behind horses. She wants to go. I mean, this is the longest distance she's tried so far, the 6.5 furlongs. But I mean, the jockey's doing a good job keeping a lid on her. And I kind of went into this replay thinking I was going to like the number 6 in this race, the number 3 on Saturday, Sweet Fusion. And that's the horse in the yellow with the black cap that's coming through on the inside. Of course, Veloce right here. And it looks like she's going to go right by her at this point in the stretch because she's got all the momentum. And she kind of flattens out. But I really like the way that Corsia Veloce sort of digs in to put this field away right here. Once the jockey's getting into her, she's like finding another gear to pull away from this group at the end. So you could see she's not the biggest filly. She's probably has more heart than size to her. But I just like those attributes that she's shown in her first couple of starts where she really battles for it. And we'll see if she ultimately wants to go a mile. But she's drawn well inside. She seems versatile. So at 8-1, I think that she's a horse that you could use in here. But the caveat with her, Gino, is that the 85 buyer that was assigned to the Catch a Glimpse, it feels a little hard to buy.
Agree.
When you look up the chart of that race.
Yep, completely agree. So that's what's hard is in a race like this for me to use her, I probably would want like double digit odds in a spot like this. And I don't think she's going to offer that because once you get past those top 2, it does look like the next logical horse is probably the 6 Hot Mash. And this one might be the next logical horse after that. So those might be your top 4 choices. What about Dinah? Should we take a look at, she was favored going into the Catch a Glimpse in that race. She really was no match for Corsia Veloce or even Sweet Fusion late. You wonder if she'll get some money in here just because she was favored last time out. Johnny V will jump aboard for Kevin Attard, who has three in this race. And I believe Ashley was saying when we previewed these races, I think he has 15 on Saturday that he's going to be saddling up. So he'll be a very busy trainer out there.
Yeah, I guess we forgot to mention in the summer stakes between Mark Cassidy and Kevin Attard, they had 8 of the 12 runners. So the dominance up there is on display. But yeah, I mean, as for Dinah, the connections are what make me respect this horse the most because we've seen them have so much success up at Woodbine. I didn't love her performance in the Catch a Glimpse last time. I showed the end of that replay. She was just kind of staying on at one pace. She was a little wide, but I thought she had every chance and just couldn't really quicken with those horses. And I guess going longer could work for her because you check out the pedigree in her Damn Social Queen. She was a turf router. She's produced Force the Pass, who was a winner of the Grade 1 Belmont Derby going 1.25 miles when he was a 3-year-old. So more distance is probably going to be just fine for Dinah. I just was looking at her form on paper, and when I watched the replays, to me, they didn't quite match up. And I was hoping to like what I saw more.
Yep, completely agree. She was a little flat for me. So this one wanted to get a little more creative, but I thought it was pretty formful with, the 3 or 4 horses that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on this one, David?
I think we covered it pretty well. The horses we didn't mention are pretty tough to make a case for. So I guess we can move on to the final Grade 1, the feature race on this card, the Woodbine Mile.
Yeah, and you got lucky because you didn't have to hear my Pina Colada song joke for the 3rd time today, as I already used that on Ashley and on Scott when we were doing video previews for this one. So Woodbine Mile, David, that's going to be race number 9. Is another Grade 1, another win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup. Think about horses like Skipaway, Leroy DeSanimo, Ventura, Wise Dan, prior winners of this race. And we have the beaten favorite from the Breeders' Cup Mile in 2024, Notable Speech, another one from the Appleby, Godolphin, Buick Charge. This is a horse who most recently was second, David, in a race at Deauville behind a very nice horse named Diego Velasquez, who I believe is going to come over and run at Keeneland and then try to run in the Breeders' Cup. And this horse had some traffic that day, had some legitimate traffic down on the inside. I think you can also say that looking at this year's form versus last year, just not quite in as good a form this year as last year when this horse won, 4 races heading into the Breeders' Cup. So you are looking at a classy horse who's coming off of a legitimate trouble trip last time out. But I do have some concerns if this is a horse who's in as good a form as he was last year.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation about where he's at from a form perspective, because if the last race wasn't showing, I would want no part of him in here because I didn't like any of his first 3 starts of the season. I mean, the lock-in stakes, okay, maybe it was a prep race and he needed it off the layoff, though. I mean, I imagine Godolphin wants to win a Grade 1. he was the last horse to come off the bridle. Like William Buick was riding him with so much confidence in there. But once he asked him, he had nothing. And then they came back into Queen Anne. That was not an ideal trip. He had to alter course multiple times in the stretch to find a running lane. And then once he did, Buick dropped the whip, which is probably not ideal. But he was still flat at the end of that race. And the fact that they tried to turn him back to 6 furlongs in the July Cup just kind of says to me that they feel like this horse isn't the same and they need to change something up to get his form back to where it was. That didn't work. But the Marois last time felt like it was a different horse showing up to compete that day because, again, he got held up. He was in traffic. But once this horse found daylight in like the final eighth of a mile, and if you guys haven't seen this replay, I would recommend looking it up on YouTube. Just Google Jacques Le Marois and the replay comes right up. In the final eighth, once he found that daylight, he was finishing like a freight train, and he was unlucky not to get there. If he repeats that race, he's going to win here. I feel pretty confident about that.
That's true.
But I would say, in terms of how tough European Group 1 races come up over the mile distance, I never really thought of Diego Velasquez as like some titan of the turf over there.
Yeah.
And Dancing Gemini, he's a solid Group 1 performer, but not always winning those races. So I didn't feel like that was the strongest Group 1. There were some others in there that had credentials that maybe didn't run their best races. So while it was the best performance of his career and it would make him the horse to beat against this field, I still don't know exactly what to expect from Notable Speech. Even going back to the Breeders' Cup last year, I watched the mile again, and I kind of forgot this horse really had no excuse not to win that race. I mean, I'll just pull up the stretch run. I mean, he is the horse that is the number, I think he's the 6th moving through in those Godolphin Silks, the chestnut towards the back of the pack. I mean, when he peels out at the top of the stretch, he's supposed to win this race, especially given the fact that he was the favorite. And not only does he get passed by more than looks, but he never even gets past Johannes, who it looked like he had all this momentum built up to run right on by, and he doesn't. So I have some questions about this horse's finishing ability on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's a good spot here because there aren't a ton of current grade 1 world beaters in this race at the moment.
There really aren't.
Right. So but I do think he's going to be a very short price, and we're supposed to poke holes in horses like this as gamblers. We're supposed to try to find ways to beat these types of horses. And I think there are a couple options in here if you're looking for some horses that could offer you a little bit more value. David, what do we do with the horse right next door? The horse from South Africa.
I have no clue. One Stripe, a horse that will be making his first start outside of South Africa. And we don't see too many South African shippers, Gino. There have been a few over the past couple of years, but I mean, that's a pretty small sample size on which to base the form of an entire country and how it translates going from there to the United States. I don't recognize the names of too many horses or really any horses that he's running against. So it's hard to draw comparisons to how good those races were versus this one. It is helpful to see some time form readings in the PPs. That gives you some sense, but I don't have a basis of reference to know how those translate. I will say, reading some articles about this horse, it does feel like he was pretty highly regarded over there. He did beat older horses 2 back. And keep in mind, he is a South American bred 4-year-old. So he's actually 3.5 years old by North American terms. And he stepped up against older horses for the first time in that Group 1 back in January. And he looked good winning that race, kind of slicing through between horses at the end. I did watch his last 3 replays, and he looked good 2 and 3 back. Although I will say the race 3 back, he was like veering out very badly at the end and kind of finished on the outside rail, whereas the other horses were on the inside rail. It was an entertaining race to watch. His last race, not good. I think the South African pundits over there believe that he had a trip in that race and was an unlucky loser. When I pulled up that replay and watched it, yes, he got cut off at the end. To my eye, he was never traveling as well as the winner and was not going to win that race. What do you make of that? I don't really know, because now he shows up in Graham Motion's barn and again on a foreign continent. So I'm not really sure. He's not the kind of horse I would want to touch at 5-2. I kind of have trouble believing he'll be that price.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be that short either, but I had such a tricky read on him too, because that last race was so bad. I agree. And you want to put a line through it and believe it just wasn't him at his best. But as you pointed out, there weren't really visually excuses. Maybe something just went wrong. He's been off for a while since. I don't really like him coming in off of that effort. And now we're talking about March. These horses have to quarantine. This is a long period of time before since he's had a race. If he is in that like 3-1-ish range and below, that's way too short for me to be looking at him.
I can't imagine he's going to be anything close to that price.
I don't think so either. Cause I look David to the outside. I don't think Win for the Money is going to be as big of a price as Win for the Money is on the morning line. I mean, this is a horse who just looks on paper really solid if you're looking for alternatives to horses like Notable Speech. He won this race last year. He's going to be making his third start of the form cycle. You look at the 2 races he comes out of, they're solid. He took a little step forward. He's a miler who can sit close. I don't really know how good he is. He doesn't really have like a big finish, but he's the type of horse who kind of puts himself in a nice spot and trips out, and he kind of falls into victories. He could get a very nice trip in here. I just don't, like at 8-1, sure, he's playable, but he's probably going to be, I think, closer to half that.
Yeah, I think he'll be the second choice in this race, actually. I mean,
right?
And his form kind of merits that, as you said. I mean, he won this race last year. He's been good in his 2 starts since returning from a layoff this summer. I mean, he did not have a good trip in the Kelso. He was wide every step of the way. That was a weekend when the rails were down on the inner turf at Saratoga. You wanted to save ground, and he did not at any point in that race. So there's an argument he ran one of the better races in the Kelso, and then he came back in the 4-star Dave last time. And I know he was, no excuse third, but he was a no excuse third behind Deterministic, who might be the most accomplished American turf horse in the country right now, and Intellect, who is on the rise for Chad Brown. So he just makes a whole lot of sense in here. And when you go through this field, Gino, I'm happy that Charlie Appleby came over with Notable Speech because it creates some intrigue to this Woodbine Mile. But when you get past him and focus on the North American runners, this is not a vintage edition of this race in terms of depth.
No, not at all. I mean, Win for the Money stands out as one of the classier horses. Gas Me Up is a horse who's in good form right now, right to the outside of Win for the Money. He's sharp, but even when you're like looking at speed figures, he just got into the 90s most recently. His overall body of work is solid. He started his career out in Southern California. I remember when he was out here. He's a horse who didn't run poorly in his first couple starts. They tried him in Graded Stakes Company. He was off for like almost 2 years. And then after showing back up, he runs and then he's off again for a year. So he's had some physical issues, no doubt about it, but he probably looks like a 3rd or 4th horse you would gravitate to on paper in here. And he doesn't look like a grade 1 winner. Really at all, right?
And you take stock of that King Edward that he exits last time. I mean, you mentioned his background. He's a horse who had taken a long time to even win a 2nd level allowance race, and he's suddenly 5-2 in the local prep for the Woodbine Mile. So I think that says a lot about the quality of that race. And I mean, I'll pull up the replay. Not only was he probably not facing the best field, but it was a total pace collapse. And
on paper, it looked that way. That's why he got bet down, too. It looked like there was a good amount of speed. It looked like he was going to set up for him. I think he was one of the last winners I've had in the last 75 race previews we've done for DRF TV, David, because just on paper, he looked like a horse who was stepping up in not a very strong race. And that's exactly what Jackson was saying. That race completely collapsed, and he took advantage. Shout out to Jackson. I know he does some work, I believe, with the HHH podcast group, and I've been on the shows with them a few times, handicapping the races. I love seeing young people handicapping races, and Jackson and Ryan and Noah, I think they do a really nice job. So
big fan of Jackson. He's very sharp.
Just set up so perfectly for him, and he feels like with Pratt aboard for Kevin Attard in a race where there aren't very many options, whatever price he is going to be way less than what I would want to play him in this grade 1.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will point out, just kind of watching this replay again, he's the number 8 horse in here in that line cap right here by cursor. As you could see, he gets into some trouble right here. He's really throwing his head about. A horse kind of put him in tight quarters. I just don't want to give him too much credit for that trouble, for all the reasons that you were getting at, where it put him in the ideal situation where he's behind the pace, and then it just falls apart at the end. And I did think he ran better than the runner-up in this race. The number 4, Wyoming Bill, was coming back in here because he made the first move. And sometimes in pace collapse races, you want the horse that's making the last move. He's the one that has the best chance to win. And, this horse, Gas Me Up, was still able to hold off Wyoming Bill. So he ran well, and he's on the upswing. I just wouldn't touch him at anything close to 5-1 against a group like this. Gino, we probably should mention the number 6 My Boy Prince as a contender in this race because he's got speed. He's probably the fastest of them all early. I'll be interested to see if the number 4 Huntmaster runs here because I think he's cross-entered in the following race on this card, and we'll see if he decides. I think that's a synthetic sprint, and we'll just see if he decides to go there instead. If that one comes out, it probably does enhance the chances of My Boy Prince. I just didn't think he ran as well as his stablemate last time in the 4-star Dave.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I actually like him better sprinting where he can sit off and have a little bit of finish where he's not right on the lead and he sits right behind. I thought his sprint races in the Highlander and particularly in the Jaipur where he's just second behind AG Bulla. He's not as good as AG Bulla, and that's fine. When he goes long, it's funny, Mark Cassey usually says he's going to be on the lead. So for the most part, that's what they want to do when they stretch him out. And it wasn't able to do that last year when they tried the Woodbine Mile and he was a 3-year-old facing older there. So I do think they'll be intent on getting to the lead because that's his chance of winning this race. If he gets loose at the top of the lane, he's got a 2-length lead. He's won over this turf course before. I really don't like him as much going long. I think he needs the certain circumstances where he gets loose, everybody's a little behind him, things go great for him, the turf course is playing that way. Otherwise, yeah, I like him more cutting back. He'd actually be kind of an interesting like 6.5 or 2 down the hill at like Santa Anita, something like that. I think he could be really good with his speed there. I wish I could be more creative in this race. What would be an okay price for you to take on a horse like Win for the Money?
That's a good question. I guess that really depends on what you think a fair price is on Notable Speech. For me, and this might sound weird because I poked some holes in him. I think Notable Speech is like 50% to win this race. So even money probably isn't the worst price on Notable Speech. And I think Win for the Money is probably somewhere like after that 20 to 25% to win. So somewhere in like the 4 to 5 to 1 range, I think is fair on Win for the Money. I don't know if you're going to get that because with the inflated morning line and him looking like an interesting pick to a lot of people,
you get the overreaction,
snowball effect. Yeah, you saw that with what was that Cox horse's name, Destino Doro, in the Wheeling Grounds Oaks on Wednesday at Kentucky Downs, where she looked like the interesting Cox horse at a much better price, and then she was everyone's horse. Yeah, and maybe that could be the case with Win for the Money. I don't know, Gino. I just felt like I didn't have a clever take on this race, and even though I was poking a lot of holes in Notable Speech, I was kind of more doing so thinking about how I'm going to evaluate this horse when he shows up in the Breeders' Cup, because that's probably the next step for him. And maybe this is not the right time to take a shot against him.
I completely agree, because what you want to do, when you're going through the field, you get to Notable Speech. He's a 2, right? And then you do poke holes in him. Then as you finish up the rest of the field and you see who the other horses in here are, there just aren't that many great options if you're trying to go against him. And the problem is, in a race like this, the only real logical looking options all feel like they're going to be shorter prices than they should be, because instead of being like the 4th or 5th choices in races like this, Win for the Money probably is going to be the 2nd choice. And we might get Gas Me Up as like a 3rd or 4th choice in here. I guess the way I could look at this race, if One Stripe were to go much higher, that would be a wild card kind of horse. I just don't think you're going to get that. And I think for me, 5 to 1 is probably where I could buy in on Win for the Money. And I'm just worried that he's going to be shorter than that with the overreaction here. So you kind of by default get back to Notable Speech, rounded back into form. Even if he ran one of those lesser races overseas, it would probably be good enough to be really competitive in here based on like what these horses have been doing recently. So didn't have too much more to add here. I know one of your buddies from X that loves to comment on the videos, Nick Sievers chimes in, right? Yeah, he's a big fan of David's as well, I know. And Emily, I know he talks with Emily Gullickson a lot online about some of her handicapping and great stuff. So nice to hear from Nick.
Nick Sievers is like he's the Wizard of Oz. He's the man behind the curtain, pulling all the strings of the content creators in the horse racing world. So
love it.
Yeah, doing this for him. As for I guess we'll wrap up, Gino, by kind of cycling back to that $5 pick three, because it sounds like each of us might be able to narrow it down to a pretty skinny ticket.
Yes.
And I'm kind of wondering how you'd be thinking about playing it.
Yeah. So if that was starting in the 6th race, which would be the first of the 3 grade ones, that's the grade 1 summer horses that I would be looking at in there, I would absolutely be using Bill of Ice as like a price horse in there. I think of the horses that will likely be short prices, I actually don't mind Wild Desert. And I would probably look to include a horse like a Military Time or the Secret Adversary. What's nice is this will be the first leg, so you can get a sense of how these horses are getting bet. This would be a race where I probably went 3 or 4 deep. I thought it was pretty competitive, looking for some prices, David. And then in the next 2, I think I could really shorten up a little bit and be a little more logical. So of the 3, I'd probably be trying to find a price in here. Who would be some of the horses you'd be looking to in the 6th race this summer?
Yeah, I would try to play this sequence staying very thin.
Yeah.
And the 2 horses that really interest me in this race are the number 12, Teddy's Rocket. He's like my main horse that I want to key on in this race. And the other one would be the other Euro, the number 4, the Secret Adversary. And I think I would try to beat the Appleby Wild Desert, just kind of given the way that I'm viewing this sequence in terms of the subsequent legs. I think where I kind of have to extract some value in here is by beating this horse in what looks like the most competitive race of the 3. I think it's the best shot to take a shot against. And if I was going to throw in one more horse on like a smaller ticket, it would be the number 7, Kassan, who I like going longer. I just don't know if the pace setup's going to be there, but I don't want to worry too much about that with the price.
And you'll be, I was going to say, you'll be rewarded on the price there, right? So it's always okay to include horses like that when they're going to be a much bigger price and they give you that value.
So my order of preference is kind of like 12, 4, 7 in the summer stakes.
And I would, I'm definitely using the 6, Bill of Ice. I'm going to have I will be including Wild Desert, and I'm looking at possible horses like Military Time and the Secret Adversary based on how we put that ticket together. So that's race 6, which would be the first of that $5 pick 3. Race 8 was the Natalma that we went through. And David, I would probably lean on Deep Lording, and my only other include might be Hot Mash. I just don't think I would want to go very deep in this race. Same thing, sort like as you're pointing out. I'm not going 4x4x4 in some of these because it's costs way too much, and we think that the 2nd and 3rd legs of the sequence could be more formful. Who are some of the horses you'd be looking at here?
Yeah, I had trouble getting past the favorites in here, and it kind of depends on how large the ticket gets, because I mean, I said I'd probably use maximum 3 horses in the first leg. In this one, it would be 1 or 2. Either I'm just using Deep Learning, who is the favorite that I prefer, or I use both, maybe with a horse. It depends what price Teddy's Rocket is. If Teddy's Rocket in the first race is actually like 8 or 10 to 1, which I find hard to believe, but if he is, I'm not going to split hairs in this race. I'm going to use single-handed victory, and use both favorites in here and just get through this leg, because this is not a race where I want to take a big stand. But if I feel like I'm not getting the value that I want in the summer stakes, I'll probably just lean on Deep Learning and kind of make that hard decision.
And then if we're alive, we get to the grade 1 Woodbine Mile, where Notable Speech looks really tough on paper. Would you play tickets with anyone else, or are you just going to try to single with this horse maybe to finish up?
Yeah, I don't like doing it to single a horse like Notable Speech that I don't love, but just given the race that's presented, he feels like the best option. If I really thought that Win for the Money was going to offer great value in here, I would go too deep, or potentially even use him over Notable Speech. I just don't see it playing out that way. And I think enough handicappers are going to poke holes in Notable Speech's recent form that you're not going to see him dip down to like 2 to 5, 3 to 5. So I think I would probably just lean on Notable Speech.
And maybe some of that recent Appleby form not being as strong will help just get his price a tad inflated on Notable Speech. Yeah, I think if I was playing just one ticket, it would probably be a single to Notable Speech and then use a couple in the 2 races leading into that. If might play another ticket where, like you're talking about, you can look at the prices to start. And one of those horses in there, if you like, maybe you lean on one of those bigger prices to start, and then you kind of have a little bit of a counter ticket if you can get one of those big prices home, and then some opportunities afterwards. So I can even see myself maybe singling a horse in the start. Like you were talking about Teddy's Rocket, maybe I take a swing with one of the bigger prices. Maybe if I wanted to go counter in the 8th race, I looked at a horse like Hot Mash on one ticket who could get loose. But yeah, a lot of handicapping and gambling is just like this, right? This conversation. Yeah. Here's the sequence we're going to look at. How do we make the most out of the ticket we want to put together? How can we maximize our opinion?
Yeah, totally. And to be honest, as I'm looking at this again, notable speech might be 2 to 5 in this race, just because there's not a whole lot in here and the money has to go somewhere. But I mean, it's a problem that you face as a horse player sometimes, where one leg might not be offering you the price that you really want, and you have to survey the other legs to see where you're getting the value. And if you're not getting the value in any leg, then maybe it's a sequence that you skip, or maybe you just pivot to a different type of wager. Maybe I just play a win bet in the summer, or box 2 or 3 horses that I like in the summer stakes. But I think it is still helpful to go through this exercise of talking about whether or not you're going to find the value in a pick 3 like this, because even if you decide not to play it, it's still useful to go through that thought exercise, because it's going to make you play smarter tickets in the future in similar types of sequences.
Yeah, for anything that you do, the more you're practicing what we're doing right here, it's just the same type of thing. You're working out your good habits. And we appreciate all of you who are checking in and hanging out with us. We'll try to do some of these on Thursdays with big cards coming up, because it gives you just a different type of experience and handicapping a live show like this than when we do our normal previews, David, where we're able to go horse by horse, give our picks at the end. We didn't get as many questions and comments. We'd love to hear from you the next time, because then we can kind of pull up other horses and we can, use you as co-host as well and feed off of you. But I've had a nice time doing these the last couple of weeks. And I know you actually had a nice winner. I think you picked the horse. You had the horse in the Grade 1 Del Mar debutante last week that Mike Smith picks up another Grade 1 victory. He just is ageless. He continues to win big races. So hopefully we can lead some folks in the right direction again this week.
The other Baffert got the job done. It does happen sometimes. We'll see if we can get home the other retard or other Cassie in the summer stakes on Saturday. But yeah, this has been fun, and we'll try to do this some more times. Especially as Breeders' Cup comes up, we'll probably have a lot of preparation to discuss. So we'd love for you to participate with us, ask questions. If you want us to pull up a replay or look up something in the PPs, we'd be happy to do so. So make sure to come back and join us on future Thursday nights.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Jim. Thanks to producer Lucia for helping us out here and hanging out with us on Thursday night. Good luck to all of you this weekend. We'll see you again real soon. Make sure to subscribe to the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel and check out all the previews we have for you.